Hey everybody, today we're going to do a tier ranking of the most likely to be picked for Kamala Harris's running mate in this upcoming general election. So we've got a list of some prominent Democratic figures here on the bottom, and we're going to go through them. And this is just going to be who I think is most likely to be picked and who would help the ticket the most, not who I like or who I don't like. So I've got tiers A, B, C, D, and F. There's no S tier, there's no Z tier. So what goes into picking a running mate? Well, a lot of people think you have to balance the ticket. Well, a while back, I did a tier ranking for Trump's running mate, and there are usually three main things. First is going to be ideology, and that's going to be, does somebody complement or balance out Harris's ideology? Over the course of her career, she tried to come off as a progressive, but everything I hear about from actual progressives is they don't like her whatsoever. To me, she seems like pure Democratic establishment. Then there's going to be geography. Harris is from California, that's the coast. She might want to pick somebody from a little bit more competitive state to potentially shore up some voters that she needs. And then there's going to be identity. And this last one I personally think is the least important, but a lot of people put the most emphasis on it. And if Harris is considered a black woman, usually people want to balance that out. Possibly a white man might best fit that description. Now there's other things like experience. She comes from the Senate. She has a background as a prosecutor. She might be looking for somebody with some executive experience, maybe even from the private sector. There's also going to be personality and maybe even a vacancy that this person might create if they're currently in office. So those are some of the things that go into this. So let's go through it. First up, we've got Amy Klobuchar, senator from Minnesota. I think she's very unlikely to be picked. Personally, I don't care if there's two women on the ticket. There's probably some voters that might be put off by two women on the ticket, but I think Harris would go in a different route. Minnesota is also not a competitive state. Klobuchar does have a lot of Senate experience, and ideologically, I would guess they're going to be similar. Also, I don't think Klobuchar is exciting whatsoever. So with that said, I'm actually going to put Klobuchar on the bottom tier. You could maybe go up to D, but I'm going to put her in F. Next, we've got Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. I always thought she would be better as a running mate than actually running for president, but now with Harris on the top of the ticket, again, having a second woman, I think really lowers her chances of being picked, so I'm actually going to put her in the D tier. Next, we've got AOC. I think she's too young, she's too controversial. She's only in the U.S. House. I think she has almost no chance of being picked. We're going to put her on the bottom. Next, Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky. He's considered more of a moderate Democrat. He's a nice guy. He's popular. He's not from an important state. He does have executive experience. I don't think he would capture any progressive voters. That would pretty much be a play for moderates, independents, suburbs. So I think Beshear would be kind of in the middle of the pack. I'm going to actually put him in the C tier. Maybe he can go up to B, but I'm going to put him in the middle. Next, we've got Beto O'Rourke. I actually don't think he's a terrible candidate. He might have had electoral success if he was not from Texas, but he does have some statewide losses under his belt for multiple offices. I think he would get the youth vote out, so that would be a plus, but I don't think he would be able to flip Texas. He's probably not too likely to be picked. I'm going to put him close to the D, but we'll put him in the C tier. Next, Elizabeth Warren. She's not from a competitive state. She's considered more progressive. At this point, she is older. Her being a woman, I think, seriously lowers her chances, but I do think she's a little bit more likely than Klobuchar and AOC. I'm going to put her in the D tier, but it's borderline. You could put that on the bottom if you'd like. Next, we've got J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois. He's extremely wealthy. He's not from a competitive state. He does have executive experience as well as some from the private sector. Pritzker, I think, is better suited at the top of the ticket as opposed to a running mate, but given this is unusual circumstances, maybe he would work out as a VP. It's a tough call, but I'm going to throw him in the middle of the pack. Next, we've got Governor Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. Prior to that, he was the Attorney General, so he has statewide experience. Pennsylvania is a key state. Shapiro is relatively popular. He seems like a nice guy. He has not been governor that long, but I suppose if you're trying to win, Shapiro is probably a good choice. He checks a lot of the boxes I mentioned at the beginning, so I'm actually going to put Shapiro at the top in the A tier. I'd like to have somebody at the top. For now, we're going to put Shapiro there. Next, we've got Jared Polis, governor of Colorado. He's also somebody I think is a reasonable pick. He's not from a competitive state, but he does have executive experience. He's a little bit younger, and I think he would actually be pretty decent on the ticket. Now, given he's not from a competitive state, I think he's a little bit less likely to be picked, so I think it's borderline C and B. I'm going to put him in the low B tier. Next, we've got Senator John Ossoff from Georgia. It's an important state. I think he's very young. That might be a knock against him, similar to J.D. Vance, so I think he might need a little bit more time under his belt, but I think it would be an alright addition to the ticket. I'm going to put him in the C tier. Next, we've got Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona. That's a swing state. He was an astronaut, but he does not have experience being a governor. However, his disposition and his background, I think, would be a reasonable fit for the ticket. I'm actually going to put him in the B tier. Next, we've got Gavin Newsom, California governor. And this is a guy who seems much more suited at the top of the ticket, not in a supporting role. So I think he's unlikely to be picked for that reason. Plus, he's from the same state as Harris. I don't think that brings any geography to the ticket. So for that reason, I'm going to put him actually in the D tier. Next, we've got Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation. He's never been elected statewide, so I do think that's an issue. He's younger. The liberal establishment seems to fawn all over him. Maybe you think he has a better connection in the Rust Belt. So I can see it either way with Mayor Pete. So for those reasons, I'm going to put him in the C tier. I could see making a case for B, but we're going to leave him in the middle. Next, we've got Raphael Warnock, Senator from Georgia. He's from an important state. He's a nice guy. I think he's unlikely to be picked, but if he were, they would be making a play for black voters. So with that said, I'm going to put him in the D tier. But I do think he could easily serve in the cabinet or possibly as a running mate on a different ticket. Next, we've got Governor Roy Cooper from North Carolina. He's term limited out, so Democrats would not have to give up a strategic position like they would for someone like Josh Shapiro. However, North Carolina is not necessarily the biggest swing state. Cooper has been popular, but I also think that he would not really excite many new voters. He's also a little bit older, but I think he's more of a do no damage kind of pick. So I could see Cooper being picked. I'm going to say that gets him just into the B tier. Next, we've got Jay Inslee, governor of Washington, who's also on his way out the door. Inslee has a ton of political experience, but he's not from an important state. He's in his 70s. I don't think he would excite many people. So that's going to put him in the D tier. Next, we've got Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, and he is new to office. He's been in there less than a couple of years. He's been considered a rising star with Democrats. I think in the future, once Moore raises his profile, he could become more of a political force. But with identity politics the way that it is, I think he is fairly unlikely to be picked. I'm going to put him in the D tier. Next, Stacey Abrams. It's really hard for me to imagine Abrams being picked. She has back-to-back statewide losses for governor. It's possible she would ignite black voters, but considering the identity of the entire ticket, I think that's very unlikely, and she's going to be in the F tier. Next, it looks like we've got Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. I actually don't think this is too bad of a pick. It's not a key swing state, but it would give Harris a connection near the Rust Belt. Walz, I think, is bland, but I think there's enough there to put him in the C tier. Next, we've got Tony Evers, governor of Wisconsin. Now, Evers has a lot going for him. He would balance the ticket with identity. He's from a key swing state. He has executive experience. He's non-threatening, but his biggest downside is he's older. Plus, there's also zero excitement. If it wasn't for age, I think Evers could be in the A tier. Because of that, I'm going to say that knocks him down almost to the C tier, but I'm going to put him in the B. Next, we've got Mandela Barnes. He's also from Wisconsin. He's the former lieutenant governor. He ran for the Senate. He lost. He's considered more progressive. I think most people would have no idea who he is. I think he's very unlikely to be picked. So for those reasons, I'm actually going to put him close to the D tier, but we'll say he just gets into F. And next, we're still on Wisconsin. We've got U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. Considering everything I said, I think she's a little bit more likely than Barnes. So that's going to be enough to get her into the D tier. And finally, we've got Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Now, like Trump's pick of J.D. Vance, Fetterman did just get into the Senate less than 2 years ago. Plus, he's recovering from the stroke. I'm not sure how much that hurts him. He could ignite some voters in the Rust Belt. That would be beneficial. I know progressives are disappointed in Fetterman given his stances on Israel, so it's a little bit more of a wild card. So I think it's borderline CB territory. But given he's from Pennsylvania, that's such an important state, I'm going to say that just gets him into the B tier. So that's it. Those are the tiers. And you could probably make some changes here. Maybe you bump Mayor Pete up to the B tier. Maybe you do the same for Beshear. You could go on and on about this. So it looks like right now, I think Shapiro would satisfy the most conditions that would help Harris. The betting markets also seem to think Shapiro is one of the most likely picks. It could be somebody else that's not even on this list. But you're going to have your own reasons for your own tiers. Again, this is not who I like or who I don't like. This is who I think is most likely to be picked and most likely to help the ticket. But we'll see what happens, so let me know in the comments. What do you think about this ranking? Do you agree with most of these picks? Which ones do you disagree with the most? Who's in your top tier? Who's your dark horse pick? And do you think that pick can deliver the White House for Harris? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.